All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's session on Beyond the License, how to actually get your business running in Saudi Arabia. I'm Al Batul, and I am happy to be here with my colleagues, the business setup and compliance expert in Saudi Arabia, Amit Anand and Harshdeep Singh. Good afternoon, and how are you doing?
All good, Albertine. Thank you. Thank you so much for arranging this. Nice to be back. And we look forward for having this conversation.
It's a pleasure to have this interaction with you, Albutul. We hope it's a fruitful discussion and all of the audience can take something away from it.
Great. So for those who's joining us for the first time, a little background about Task. Task is a leading business and workforce solutions company in the MENA region since 70 years ago. And we provide suite of services, comparison services to services in the region. We host this series of webinars on business setup and compliance in Saudi Arabia. On this webinar, we try to answer as much of your questions as possible. So feel free to drop your questions on the question section on the right side, and we'll cover all of your questions by the end of this session. In case you are interested to learn more about Task, you can visit our website, taskoutsourcing.com, or our social media handle on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and X at Task Outsourcing. You'll be able to watch our last webinar recordings on our YouTube channel as well. So our previous webinar, we covered the business setup process and the requirements in terms of Saudizations, budget, etc. And we received many inquiries. We noticed mainly these inquiries about the post-incorporation process, not the process of setting up. And you remember, Amit, that we noticed also the businesses struggle with the post-incorporation. And it seems that they assume once they get the license, they can start the operation immediately.
Right. And that's the biggest bottleneck, Albatul. So I wasn't surprised when I received those queries in that in that chat box. And look, you have to understand that the incorporation over here in Saudi Arabia has got two major factors. One is the incorporation part, which basically starts right from the get-go of you drafting the articles of association for you to come into Saudi Arabia till the time you receive your CR. So that is incorporation, right? Which is trade license equivalent for our audience. I mean, whoever is based over here, based in UAE. Now, the second part of incorporation is the more lengthier and the actual process. Now, thanks to MISA, the first part of incorporating a company or registering a company is relatively easier compared to maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Today, believe you me, within 2 weeks, you receive your CR, 3 weeks at the max. The actual work of incorporation literally starts from the time you receive your CR to create or make your company employee ready, right? That's the objective of people when they come over here to the kingdom. Now, right from the get-go of starting your post-incorporation process, there are so many checkpoints, right? The first process which needs to be completed is basically onboarding a general manager, right? Now, just onboarding an expat over here in the kingdom has got more than between 7 to 8 checkpoints, right? So that's the process which you have to consider. Any expat who's getting onboarded from a foreign location, who's not based in Saudi Arabia, the onboarding lead time could be between 30 to 45 days. That's the actual process. And then you have all the portals which you have to set up in the kingdom, right? When you start. Now, these portals can only be established when your general manager is onboarded, because it's on his or her credentials that these portals are going to be set up. Now, many of you might hear this 14 portals and think, wow, it's a complicated process. No, it isn't. It's not complicated. It's a bit comprehensive, However, things in Saudi Arabia are extremely digital, right? But there is a sequence of event which you need to follow. And if you have mapped this sequence of events, your journey of post incorporation will be very smooth.
All right. So, what are the most biggest challenges foreign businesses face during this phase post incorporation?
You heard me talking about creating portals, onboarding an expat. So I don't want to scare away people over here. It is a lengthy process, but it's a process which is in sequence, and it has got certain guidelines which you need to follow, right? Now, the biggest bottleneck that I see is the actual onboarding of the individual, which is required. So you're basically entering the unknown, right? So companies who are trying to form an entity over here, they see the journey, which is smooth till the time they receive the CR, and then they have so many other things to do, right? Like literally, and again, I'm not trying to scare away people, but there are actually 171 transactions which you have to do post you receive your CR. Now, these 171 transactions, some of them are one time, some are recurring on a yearly basis, some are recurring on a monthly basis, and it's a part of your regular government compliance when when your company becomes employee ready.
But all are digitalized, right?
All are digital, absolutely. So you literally do not have to go and visit any government authority. You could do that once or twice a year, that too in case if there is a bottleneck. But all these bottlenecks can be resolved via the system or the portal which you would create. Right? So I think the biggest challenge which companies today face is the unknown factor of what needs to be done post my CR. Right? So whenever I talk to customers, and when I give them the approximate time frame when they have signed up with us, I've seen majority of them a bit surprised. Right? They have this notion in mind that within a month everything would be set up. That isn't the case. It would not take a month. It would probably take 2 months, maximum to 3 months, for you to be, employee ready.
So, great insight, Amit. Harsh, whenever we talk about post-incorporation, compliance is always a key. And when we talk about compliance, we mainly refer to the government portal. So how many government portals or government bodies foreign companies need to interact with?
Right. So I think, Albatul, it's a very comprehensive question, right? And as very correctly mentioned by Amit earlier, the process is long, is lengthy, and it's very digital, right? So, the portals can vary depending on the activity the business is doing over here, right? For example, you will have a portal for a company that is doing a lot of export-import work, right? They're involving a lot of custom-related authorities over here. So portals like SABIR and FASA become integral to a company, right? For example, if a company is involved in construction-related work over here, right, or they have a physical office setup, right, then the portal called Baladiya becomes integral, which is a municipality equivalent, right? Then if a company has to ensure that they are complying with the CDC related norms, because a lot of companies are required to have a civil defense certificate to apply for certain RFPs and certain tenders, right? Then the CDC portal becomes integral for them. So registering on the portal and maintaining the compliance becomes key. Now there are some portals that are cut across all the industry lines, right? So for example, the portal of KEWA. KEWA is the platform where all the new visas are issued from. The contracts are issued from, all the contracts are renewed using KEWA, right? Every company would require to register on KEWA. Similarly, Mukim, any employee-related activity. For example, if the expats have to go outside the kingdom, they require exit re-entry visas. We all know that, right? Mukim is the platform that allows you to do all of that. It tracks any employee engagement activity. For example, if your employee has accumulated certain fines, even for traffic violations, Mukim is a portal to track that. So it is the employee activity related portal that has to be maintained by the employer. Then there is a portal called GOSI, right? It's the Journal Organization for Social Insurance. So this organization, like tracks the insurance that has been created against every single employee. So ensuring that you are compliant with the required amount of insurance for your Saudi employees and for your expats, and you're updating all the information on GOSI becomes critical. Similarly, we have a portal called Mudad, which is the wage protection system equivalent, right? So again, all of the employee salaries, whatever benefits that were promised to them in the contract, have to be paid to them, right? And Mudad is a system that tracks the compliance for that, right? So in a nutshell, Alberto, there are about 14 portals. The number of portals can go up to 16 or 17 as well. It depends on the nature of activity that you're doing, right? But like 14 portals are, mostly common across all the business lines.
Right. So Batul, I think on your question, Batul, you also specified how many government bodies do we have to literally visit, right? In your post-incorporation journey, the only government body which you perhaps would visit is the Saudi Business Center. Post that, you only visit government bodies whenever it is required, because things are pretty similar. Like what Harsh said about Mudad, which is the wage protection system, which has been developed in the kingdom. Now, that is completely digital, and it's a three-way interactive portal, right? It also interacts with the employee. Now, for you to justify anything on the wage protection system, you go online, you complete the justification, and then the MOHRE of Saudi will basically decide whether the justification is enough for the ticket to be closed or not. So it's completely digitalized.
Great. Thank you, Amit, for your addition to the answer. So, Harsh, is there any new update on these government bodies or initiative that foreign company need to be aware of?
Right. Yes, Albutul, there are a few. So, the regulatory compliances do update every now and then as the business activity in the kingdom is picking up, right? Just to give you a hint of two recent major compliance changes, we have had revision in the Saudization percentages for a lot of professions. For example, for engineering, they have revised the Saudization percentage from 25 to 30%. Similarly, for accountancy, the percentage has been revised, right? So this information is published by Ministry of Labour or Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development, MHRSD, which is the equivalent of MORE of UAE over here. On a parallel note, labour laws have revised the probation period for every single employee in KSA. So now you can have up to 180 days upon the consent of both employer and the employee. The probation period can be up to 180 days, which is believed to be a sufficient amount of time where both the employer and the employee can see the fit to the role of the employee, right? And we have had a major change in the taxation part, right? So Zatka has come up with the Zatka Phase 2 norms, right? So Zatka Phase 2 basically is a very comprehensive policy setup which requires a feature called invoicing, right? So any company having a turnover of over 2.5 million, which I believe will be any company which has spent over 3 years or 4 years in the kingdom will have probably that much turnover, is required to be Zatka Phase 2 compliant, which means that you have to integrate your billing system, your invoicing system using APIs to the Fatura system of Zatka, right? So again, compliance chain updates are quite frequent in the kingdom, but these are probably in the last 60 days that we have seen the major compliance rates.
Right, thank you, Harsh. Back to you, Amit, and from your experience of helping lots of foreign businesses with the business setup process and post-incorporation process, can you share with us the most common mistakes and pitfalls that usually foreign businesses make during this phase?
Right. You see, again, probably, I don't want to, sound repetitive. However, it's the unknown which companies do not know, Saudi Arabia, right? Now, for you to literally have a smooth journey, you have to have mapped out all the processes which are included, completed, right? One is the pre-incorporation, and the second one is the post-incorporation part, right? The typical bottlenecks which I see people facing is not understanding the rules around Saudization, right? Now, your Saudization target as an organization is basically determined on the activity that you choose to come into the kingdom, right? So you could have multiple activities. However, the activity which has the highest Saudization will be chosen as your primary activity, and you would be given the target of Saudization, which you have to meet. Like, for instance, if you're a consulting firm, your Saudization target literally is 37 to 40%, which means if you have got 10 employees in the kingdom, 4 of them have to be Saudi nationals, right? And then the whole Saudization process is determined right from the time you draft your articles of association, wherein you would also mention the type of activity which you would choose to come into the kingdom, right? So you have to be a bit tactful over there, right, when it comes to choosing the right activity. Then is the concept of onboarding employees, right? So when you come into the kingdom, unless you're a technical scientific office or you're a regional HQ where there is no Saudization requirement, all other companies would require and would adhere to Saudization, right? So when you're onboarding an employee, the notion is that for one employee, I will get 3 visas. No, that's not how it works over here in the kingdom. It really depends on the activity. And then when you onboard the employee, the trend that I've seen over here, especially in Riyadh, where we all are based, is companies tend to give chance to a lot of young Saudi nationals, right? Which is a good thing. However, there is a caveat around that. Whenever you're giving a chance to a Saudi fresher, now this Saudi fresher may be registered as a student, right? So when you register them into your system, they would still be reflecting as a student, and you would not get the Saudization benefit which you have intended for, right? It's very important that you monitor the incoming process which is expected, right? And you do a constant validation of your whole onboarding process. So these are typically the 2 bottlenecks which I see, or which I have, because every company would have some unique issues, right? Because companies that I speak to, where we do post-incorporation work, they do come back to me and say that, Amit, we were not expecting such a lengthy process, right?
Yeah.
But these are the few things, when you map out the entire process, may delay your foot. I mean, basically, whatever you're trying to do over here in the kingdom, it may delay that entire your first step of making your company employee ready.
So I mentioned 2 important points, and we'll come into Saudization for coming questions. But the first point, building on this point, so how can companies avoid delay in their operation process?
So, again, delay in your operations would only happen when you do not know what is included in the operations, right? So from the get-go, you basically map out the process, like how much time would it take for me to submit that first MISA application? What all is required for me to submit that first MISA application? What could be an ask from MISA if they want justification? Like, for instance, with many companies, MISA will ask for a business plan, right? For some companies, it would be straightforward. So you have to be prepared with all these touch points to ensure that your journey is smooth, right? Post MISA, is Ministry of Commerce and Industries, from where you receive your CR, right? Now, what are the things required to go to MOKI and receive my CR, right? All those things have to be mapped. Once I have my CR, what timelines would it take for me to onboard a general manager? Now, if the general manager is based over here in Saudi Arabia, it's pretty straightforward because, we take a transfer, right? There is no cancellation of Ikama, right? So that's a pretty straightforward process, but I may still need a notice period to be served, right? But onboarding a general manager from a foreign location would have 9 touch points. Now, how much time would it take for him to complete his in-country medicals, complete his police clearance, complete the validation of his degree? All these things have to be mapped to ensure that you do not have any potential bottlenecks for you to successfully start your transition into Saudi Arabia as a firm.
Thank you, Amit. Back to you, Harsh, and again on regulation compliance. What are the key legal and taxation requirements foreign businesses need to meet?
Right. So Albatul, I believe we can answer it in a two tranche manner, right? So number one tranche is the compliance that is constant, right? It has to be done monitored all 12 months, right? And second tranche is a more like a monthly compliance thing, right? So for example, you have activities like Saudization. The monitoring has to be constant, right? Any new visa quota issued, what is the visa quota balance? The monitoring has to be consistent. About the renewal of the Kiwa contracts, right? Ensuring that all the Mudat queries are answered. Again, has to be a very frequent, probably ongoing compliance matter, right? The second part, or the most happening part, is probably the monthly compliance part, right? So over here, Albatul, whenever you're looking at any GOSI filings happening, right? So all of your employees have to be registered on GOSI, and their salaries and the contribution to the GOSI have to be updated on the portal, right? For example, let's say you have onboarded a new employee. It's integral that along with issuing a new KEWA contract, you activate the employee on GOSI, you register the employee on MUDA. So all the portals are reflecting a consistent information, ensuring that whenever all the portals on the back end are interacting with each other, the information is not inconsistent among all of them, right? Secondly, let's talk about the financial aspect, right, on the taxation part. So for any foreign company, we know they have to file the corporate income tax, right? They also have to file a VAT, right? They have to do the VAT filing, and they have to file withholding tax, right? So the frequency of VAT and withholding tax filing varies from the as per the company operations. For example, any company with turnover of over 40 million riyals per year is required to file VAT monthly, right? Any company under 40 million riyals can file VAT quarterly, but quarterly is a minimum VAT filing requirement, right? Missing the VAT filing requirements can cause financial implications. The fines can be as high from 5% to 25% of your turnover. So fines can be quite significant, right? Similarly, withholding tax filing has to be done as and when any foreign money transfer is happening, right? So this is more like as and when situation. So again, going back to my original point, some of the compliance matters have to be tracked on a very consistent basis, right? It's important that you perhaps have your own GR function or have an external GR function, right, which is being supported through your in-house team. And both the entities, both the touch points are auditing the portals on a frequent basis to ensure the regular compliance is happening. And parallelly, whatever monthly or quarterly compliance has to happen, again, there has to be certain benchmarks established or governance mechanism established over there. So your monthly or the quarterly compliance or the filings, you are not missing that.
All right. So I told you we'll come back to Saudization because, as you know, Saudization is one of the most critical aspects of operating in Saudi. And I also know whenever we have a webinar, we always discuss Saudization, but we always have something new each time to talk about it. So this time, I want you to share with us how can Saudization can impact the operation of foreign companies in Saudi Arabia?
Right. So I think let's address the elephant in the room now. Okay. So
Yeah.
so now you have to understand. Look, Saudization is here to stay. Now, as an organization, whenever you open up any entity around the world, whether be it branch or LLC, the expectation is that you would contribute to the local economy. Hence, you do have Saudization. And like I said, Technical Scientific Office and RHQs, they do not have Saudization. However, the whole concept of RHQ and Technical Scientific Office is the entities to be a non-financial entity. I mean, you cannot generate profits out of those entities. Those are strategic offices, right? But if you are forming a branch or a LLC over here in Saudi Arabia, like I said, there are two types of Saudizations. One is macro Saudization based on the entity's activity, and second is micro Saudization, which basically is based on the type of people that you would hire. Now, continuing to my example of a consulting firm wherein your macro Saudization is 37 to 40%, let's say if the same firm tries to hire project management people, right, who would be doing projects over here in the kingdom. Now, these roles have a Saudization target. So a role like a project management or a consultant as a designation will have 40% Saudization target. It means, apart from you maintaining the macro Saudization, if you are going to hire project management people, you have to maintain, let's say if you hire 10 people, 4 of them have to be Saudi, right? Now, so this whole process is also monitored on a weekly basis, right? So it's important that you keep a track of this, which will allow you to have a bird's eye view on your corporate compliance, and also would allow your HR and your recruitment functions to do manpower planning better, right?
Okay. Company ensure they meet Mitaqat, which is Saudization requirements. Is there any steps they can take to ensure their compliance with the Saudization?
You see, first is to trust in the process and trust in the country, right? You will find reliable manpower within the country, and these people would be committed to your company's objective, right? So that is one. So believe in the process. Saudi today, the young Saudis whom we employ, we like their energy. They're really looking to contribute to the private entity, and they really want to grow, right? So first, you trust in that. The second part, an extremely critical part, is you do your governance on a weekly basis, right? Because it's not just one portal which you have to maintain. There are so many touch points that you have to maintain, right? And these touch points and these these statuses of whether be it Saudization or your Mudat compliance or your contract compliance changes on a weekly basis, right? Let's say if there any attrition, right? Your Saudi, I mean, if you have a Saudi leaving you, a Saudi national leaving you on a Monday, on the next Sunday you would see a drop in Saudization, right? So, and same is the case when you have additions. If you're adding expats, your Saudization goes low, right? So all of this needs to be monitored on a weekly basis, macro level, micro level, for you to be on top of your game. Unless you do that, you won't be able to really manage the whole government compliance landscape here in Saudi Arabia.
Right. So, besides Saudization, Harsh, do we have any targets that the businesses or foreign companies specifically need to meet?
Right. So yes, Albatul, so targets we do have. One we have discussed, about Saudization in a great detail, right? So that is specified by the Ministry of Labour. It's a very workforce-oriented target, right? we do have target across pretty much all the government entities that we are dealing with over here. For example, whenever you have your MISA license approved, right, your CR, your company registration is valid for a period of 1 year. After the completion of 1 year, again you have to renew the CR, right? So monitoring the date of renewal, ensuring that any new activities, if they have to be added, right, or ensuring, for example, you're on RHQ, right? So you are required to have at least 15 people in your RHQ CR by the end of first year. If you don't have 15 people, ensuring that at least from your end, all the compliance checks have been met, or at least an exemption letter to MISA has gone, right? Seeking an exemption that you are not able to meet your target due to XYZ reasons, So that is from the very company setup point of view, right? Now you also have targets around your taxation and your Zatka point of view, right? So Zatka will require you to ensure that you are meeting with the invoicing criteria depending on your annual turnover. If you're a larger company, the annual invoicing criteria is applicable to you quicker, right? If you're a smaller company who's scaling up, you probably can avoid the invoicing part for, let's say, first 6 months or 1 year of operation. But again, ensuring that you are tracking your annual turnover and ensuring that you are, compliant with, if they require your invoicing to be started as per Zatka Phase 2 is happening is critical. Similarly, whenever a new Saudi employee is onboarded, right? So they have a very specific GOSI requirement, right? They have to be paid 11.75% of their salary as a GOSI contribution, right? So ensuring that you are activating the Saudi employee in your GOSI portal, or once a Saudi employee is leaving your GOSI portal, joining another company, you're deactivating the portal, right? Because in certain scenario, it can actually happen that the Saudi employee is showing active on your portal, and in the new company also, the Saudi employee is showing active, right? So in this case, there will be a problem that GOSI will raise back to you, a query that GOSI will raise back to you, right? Because it's not consistent across your Mudad, your Kiva, and your GOSI portal. Similarly, whenever the employees are paid salary, the SIP file has to be uploaded, right, to the bank, and the compliance has to be maintained in the Mudad wage protection system, right? So any discrepancy from the said wage that has been promised will be asked back to the company, right? And the company has to give an explanation or a reason, right? And ensuring that you are answering Mudad queries, in a timely manner again becomes critical, right? So the timelines and the targets will be across all different platforms, be it financial, be it labor, be it contract oriented, or be it even the municipality contracts or the municipality guidelines that you have, right? So having an audit system, right, having a governance mechanism, having an in-house GR or an external consultant that you can rely upon, that you can ask your queries to, becomes very critical over here.
Okay. I see. Thanks, Harsh. I still have a couple of questions left for you guys, but I want to bring our audience attention to the link that I shared on the chat. Please take the one question survey. That will help us improve our webinars and understand how can we come up with better topic that relate to your inquiries. Harsh, again, back to you with the regulation evolving, constantly evolving in Saudi Arabia. Staying informed is key. So how can companies keep up with these changes and make sure they act accordingly?
Correct, right. I think this becomes integral, Albatul, because as the business environment is evolving in Saudi, and we know how fast it's evolving, right? We can see the number of companies incorporating, the amount of FDI happening, right? The compliance changes are happening quite frequently, right? So even from the government's point of view, they are trying to ensure that the policies are as business friendly as possible, right? But having said that, it makes a necessity for every company to ensure that they are on top of the regulatory changes in the kingdom, right? So number one, in my opinion, would be ensuring that you are following all the government platforms on their social media accounts, right? So let's say whenever MISA is doing any regulatory change on the licensing part or on the incorporation part, they will probably have a press release and equivalently, the information will be posted on their LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social media accounts. Similarly, Zatka, if they have to announce any phase 3 implementations, right, or any changes to the phase 2 implementations, any revisions to the turnover requirement for the invoicing or for the integration of APIs, right? Again, it will be announced via press release. It will be posted on their Twitter platform. Similarly, any changes by Ministry of Labor, equivalently any South Asian percentages revisions, right? Again, goes on all the social media platforms and also is released as a press release. Number one would be ensure that you are following the government portals, all the government bodies, and you're covering all of the social media platforms, right? Number two, I would say ensure that organization like Task, we do publish a lot of content about the revisions, right? We have a weekly newsletter that our marketing team is running. We also have monthly compliance changes, our regulatory landscape change reports and newsletters published. So ensure that you are subscribed to such reports, right? Third, I would suggest ensure that you have an external consultant, right? So whenever there is any query that you are getting back from a portal, right, having an external consultant to discuss with, to depend on. If your GR operations are in-house, it will help quite a lot. Or if your GR operations are outsourced to a service provider, again ensuring that they are competent enough that they are tracking all the changes, they are tracking all the regulatory requirements or the updates. I think it again the burden of responsibility falls on the customer itself, right?
All right, so the last but not the least question before we move to the audience questions is for both of you. So I want you to share your advice or your recommended best practices for companies to ensure long-term compliance with the Saudi regulation in general. Amit, you want to start?
Yeah. So I think Harsh has. I think he covered everything basically, right? The only thing that I would summarize and end up with is, look, companies they try and come here and they try to do everything, But my only recommendation to everyone who's planning to come over here in the kingdom is, please try and stick to the core. You should focus on your core while your non-core can be externalized, right, by someone more professional who can really manage things for you. Now, non-core would mean your compliance function, a bit of your HR function can be literally outsourced to a professional entity which can manage and contribute to your company's objective. So don't try and do everything in the kingdom. You may end up in a situation wherein you're focused somewhere else while you see that there is this bottleneck which is creeping up and up, and then the whole chain of these 14 portals are blocked. Right? So in the end, focus on your core, and non-core, I think that's a function which you should really think of responding.
Do you want to add anything, Harsh?
Yeah, very briefly from my side, Alberto. So I think Amit really summed it up, right? Ensuring that you are tracking any changes happening, right, via a consultant or yourself becomes critical. Then, lastly, having probably a team that can act upon this, right? So having a structure in house if you are doing it internally. Besides your GR operations, having a team that whenever there is any escalation coming up, or if there are any compliance related, pushbacks that you're facing, right, that there is a team to audit, to check, to ensure that governance is there, even on the GRO team. So the implications of not meeting compliance can be quite severe, right? Because the compliance again is highly digital. The rules are laid out very clearly, right? But not meeting compliance can result in blocking of portals, can result in you not being able to issue new exit re-entry visas, your people not able to exit the country, new people you're not getting able to onboard new people because you're not able to issue new visas, right? Or it can be financial implications as well if the taxation requirements or the compliance is not met. So ensuring that compliance is on point and it's well tracked using in-house mechanism and using an external consultant, I think is probably one of the good solution that a lot of our clients are using, and we do recommend it to most of the people that we talk to.
Right. Thank you, both of you. And I'll take your help to answer. We have the questions that we have lots of questions. Starting with Haya, I think Haya will let someone from our business setup experts contact you post the webinar and to understand more your requirements. Roisin, I'm not sure if this I would now say it correctly, but can non-GCC expat be the 100% stakeholder, shareholder of the company? I mean, I think we discussed this on previous webinars, but can you give a brief answer? Amit, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. So Roisin, I think you can, to answer your question, basically you can be 100% owner of an entity. However, if you're trying to set up a company over here as an individual, you will have to take up the premium IQAMA. But if you already have an entity who's operational for the past 2 years minimum outside the kingdom, and if you have financials which are audited for the past 1 year, you can open up an entity over here.
Okay, we have another question from Tipat on how many days required to incorporate company in Saudi?
Look, I mean, if I have to give you the standard timelines, the standard timeline for MISA is 3 weeks for you to get your investment license, and thereafter, the process of Ministry of Commerce and Industries, from where you receive your from where you receive your CR, your commercial registry, is 2 weeks. So 5 weeks in total, plus minus, for you to incorporate an entity, and that is in case if MISA or MOKI would not ask for further justification. So in an ideal scenario, 5 weeks.
Right. So another question from Rasheen. Can you let us know approximate current percentage of local businesses, business owners and expat business owners?
So what do you mean? I mean, the number of business owners in Saudi versus number of non-Saudi business owners? Is that your question, Roisin?
Or maybe if it's a joint venture, that's what they mean.
I mean, it is a common phenomena for you to come in as a joint venture, and basically, we have encountered wherein companies have come in and have had partnership with local entities over here so that they get more traction in the market. However, in the past 3 years, precisely from 22 to until now, we've seen a lot of foreign entities coming over here and setting up their own shop and having 100% ownership.
Okay, so there is another question about RTQ, and it says, how are compliance-related requirements different than a regular commercial entity?
Right. I'll have Harsh speak about it, but you have to remember that, first of all, you need to qualify to open up an RHQ. So there are qualification criteria, like you need to have 3 entities in other countries for you to qualify to open up an RHQ, and an RHQ basically cannot be a profit center. It has to be a cost center, right? And Harsh, you want to add something?
Right. So adding to what Amit, you have mentioned over here. So because an RHQ is not bound by Saudi Egyptian laws, right? So the maintaining the visa quota for having X number of Saudis to get your visa quota is no longer a requirement. However, being a RHQ, you have to have at least 15 people on your CR by the end of first year. Now that becomes your number one compliance challenge, right? If you are not able to meet your RHQ criteria for first year, you will get a query back from Ministry of Investments, right? So in case you're not meeting the requirement, it is important that you're either a consultant or you yourself are approaching visa to get an exemption, right? An RHQ can have a maximum number of 256 people on the CR. Now you can't exceed your number from 256. That becomes your compliance point number 2, right? Now, having exempted an RHQ from the Southization requirement, we have to remember that RHQ still has to raise all the new Kiva contracts, right? They still have to issue a visa. So the requirement of complying with Kiva still remains there. They still have to pay out people and pay GOSI, right? So the insurance contribution still has to go out. And it has to be recorded in the GOSI platform, so the GOSI requirement also stays there, right? Similarly for Mudad, because Mudad will still be tracking all of the service paid, right? Baladi will still be tracking, if their licenses or the municipality license is meeting the criteria, if they have the required infrastructure to run a physical office, right? Or if they are into, some other nature of activity, right? If they are meeting the requirement setup. So, in a nutshell, Albatul, the requirement for RHQ on the compliance would probably be still on par with any other business or any other legal entity, barring the requirement of Southization, right? But because we have a couple of new layers added to it, because we have to maintain certain visa quota, I think the compliance probably is not getting any lower. It's probably getting more nuanced because not meeting the visa quota requirements needs another layer of escalations and another layer of compliance management on the company's part.
Okay, great. Harsh, we have another question. When specific regulatory differences businesses should be aware of.
What's that question again, Albatul? Can you repeat?
So I think it means if they have business operating in different cities in Saudi, will they have to adhere to different regulation for each city?
So your municipality and your baladia is different to the city that you're operating in. However, the laws in these cities, it remains the same. And I believe the person probably asking the question is coming from UAE because it has got 7 emirates and each emirates has got a rule. But over here, everything is federal because it's a proper country.
Okay, we have another question.
If I can just add one nuance, right? So number one, Baladia would be region specific, right? Number 2, Chamber of Commerce will become region specific, right? So just that in Riyadh you are dealing with Riyadh Chamber of Commerce. In Jeddah you're dealing with Jeddah Chamber of Commerce, right? And as we mentioned, everything else is region agnostic. It's consistent, Kiva, GOSI, Mudad, Mukim, everything is consistent across different regions in the country.
Okay, great. The other question is about CR, multiple CRs, and how does having multiple CRs impact compliance obligations? Can you just give a little bit background about why companies need to have multiple CRs, and then we can answer the question?
Right. So you typically take a multiple CR when you are venturing out into a different domain than the one which you have chosen when you established your first CR. And multiple CRs would not mean that Southization requirement will change. Now, if you have one CR, which is a consulting CR, where Southization is 40%, and if you have a second CR, which is operations and maintenance, where Southization is at 20%. So the mean of these both would become your master Southization. And look, if you have multiple CRs, you also have to bear in mind that you have to monitor 2 systems, right? In total to ensure that you're meeting your micro Southization in all these CRs.
All right, so we are running out of time, and this is the last question, unfortunately, that we're going to answer. What step should company take if a license renewal deadline is missed?
So, number one, I think that's a huge governance issue. If your license renewal is missed, licenses in Saudi Arabia, they renew every year. So I would advise against that. If your license renewal is missed, then there are fines which are imposed for non-renewal. However, at that point, you may require to visit the authority from where the license has been issued, and it's in most of the cases, if it has not crossed that 1 month barrier, you will be able to renew it online.
All right. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Harshdeep, for your great insight in this session. And thank you for our audience for sticking with us for the last 50 minutes. It was a great session. And we will contact each one of you in case you didn't get your question answered. And we can arrange a consultation call in case you are interested in our services as well. Till the next webinar, see you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.